Silent scan. Silent scan.
Defiance.
Bants and Bants.
You can't control us.
Bants and
A frightening dystopia.
Bants and Bants.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Open your eyes.
Bants and
An alternate reality. We begin as wanderers, and we are wanderers still.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Bombs and Bants with John, Mark, and the Missus. I'm John, and with me, as always, is Mark.
Hello.
And the Missus.
Hey there.
We'll cover 3 stories on this week's episode. Up first, I will tackle man-eating squirrels in New York City. Then, Mark will be up next with a discussion on what may have caused the ending of ancient Greece, even more ancient than ancient Greece. And finally, the Missus has a Wall Street Journal article talking about how even Homer gets mobbed. We'll also hear from this week's sponsor, Buffalo Bill's delivery service. You know, one of the things I am really excited about this show, I think this is going to be our best one yet. I think it's going to be really, really good.
Okay, the onus is on you.
No, I think this episode is going to be so good that it's going to be a controlled substance in many different states across the nation because of how hard people will laugh. I think it's going to be that good. But.
Oh, by the way, speaking of stupid jokes, and you said I didn't mention stupid jokes, so I think you did. I have a question for you.
Yes.
What do you get if you cross the Queen and Prince Philip?
Assassinated?
Yes, killed in a tunnel.
All right. Well, starting off, I have information that the zombie apocalypse is certainly upon us. The article I have is from the New York Post. Savage squirrel terrorizes Queens community with cage match attacks. Apparently, there is a squirrel on the prowl in New York City. We have a lot of squirrels around here, but the thing I've noticed is none of them attack us.
I actually had a squirrel fall out of a tree onto my head one time.
Well, okay, you got to tell us that story.
Well, there's not a lot to it. I was just walking along. This was when I was in college, and I was walking along the sidewalk going to class, and I hear some rustling in the tree above me, look up, and poof, right onto me was a squirrel.
Did it kill you?
What do you think?
Oh,
I'm going to leave you in suspense.
Did it attack you?
No, it ran quickly away.
Which is what I normally am used to with squirrels, right? Because unless they have some sort of plague, if they have bubonic plague, sometimes they get very, very aggressive.
Well, they can be rabid too, though.
Right.
I was accosted in college by a squirrel one time. I was walking between classes, and the squirrel literally jumped on my foot and started tugging on my pants leg to try to convince me to give him some food.
I think that might have been the motivation that was behind the squirrel that landed on me too, because there was a guy that sat in the quad on my campus, and I would go to class. I had an early class, and when I would walk across campus about 7:30 in the morning, I would always see this guy feeding squirrels. And one day I'm walking by, and he's laid the squirrel food on the ground, and he looks up at me as I walk by, and we could make eye contact, and he says, "I have to do that because that one bites."
Wow. So I have a question. Were these large squirrels or small squirrels that your incidents? Wait, stop. Don't answer. I don't want to be accused of criticizing. Okay. Well, my one final observation on this is that this shows the very big similarity between cigarettes and squirrels. They're both very safe until you put them in your mouth and set them on fire.
I missed that setting the squirrel on fire part. Did I not read that part?
There was nothing in there about that. But now we have a word from our sponsor.
COVID got you down. Coronavirus keeping you in the house. Still want to get great food but can't leave the house? Call Buffalo Bill's food delivery service. Our one employee, Jamie Gum, will work tirelessly to deliver you the best food from any restaurant in the tri-state area. Want Applebee's? Jamie will get it for you.
It puts the lotion on its skin.
Need dog food for your precious? Jamie will get it for you. Need to get custom sewing supplies? Jamie's your man, a perfect little lamb. Best of all, Jamie works only for tips. You could say he has skin in the game.
Would you tip me? I'd tip me. I'd tip me big.
You bet, Jamie. Now, since Jamie works just for tips, there is a minimum tip required, but that's only 3%.
It puts the tip on the bill, or otherwise it doesn't get the swell.
But feel free to tip Jamie more if you find his services to your liking. Call Buffalo Bill's Delivery Service for the quickest deliveries in the Quad State area. 1-800-555-BILL. That's 1-800-555-BILL. Wow, you're just going to cut us all off, huh? No, that's fine.
No,
It's fine. No, it's fine.
No, we can keep going.
No, I have funny stories, but they aren't. So I told my only squirrel story. I have snake stories, though. I have a lot of snake stories.
And now, Mark with a discussion from the website Live Science.
All right. Thank you, John. The article I'm looking at is titled "The 300-Year Drought Was Downfall of Ancient Greece." And actually, it's more than just that. What this is talking about is the Bronze Age collapse, which occurred roughly around 1150 to 1200 BC. And for those listeners that aren't aware of it, at that time, Egypt was pretty much still at their height of power. There were various other civilizations around the Mediterranean and in the Middle East also that were very powerful, including the Hittites and the Mycenaean culture, which was in Greece. And about all the same time, all these civilizations, with the exception of Egypt, completely collapsed. They have evidence of warfare, cities being burned. Some of the evidence suggests that there were revolts against the elites and the leaders, and it all just collapsed. And traditionally, people looked at different causes for it. One is whether they're invaded by a group of people that they call the Sea Peoples, which obviously by their name you can tell were attacking from the sea. They've looked at the idea of earthquakes. There is evidence that some of the cities had earthquakes near that time. Again, warfare of various types, and then famine is a big one. And they periodically looked at drought. And basically, this article describes some new research that suggests that there actually was a 300-year drought period leading up to this collapse. So as you can imagine, these people got squeezed more and more as far as their ability to produce grain. And probably it was, multiple things happening at the same time, just the biggest black swan event. But in about 150 year period, all these civilizations were gone except for Egypt. Egypt was permanently weakened after the fact.
When I think of civilizations and societies collapsing, I don't think you can have a discussion about that without bringing up Jared Diamond. Are you going to take part in the podcast, or are you going to text on your phone?
I wasn't texting. I was doing a quick research thing, but there was no.
Okay.
We'll
wait. Oh, we're ready? Okay.
I'm here. Yeah.
Rejoining the podcast now is John.
I never left.
You just have nothing to say about this one?
No, I have a lot to say about this one. Actually, I have a lot. First off, one of the things I get probably a little bit skeptical of when I see articles like this, because it does bring out that drought may have been the cause. But it seems like we get one of these articles every 4 years. Oh, here's the new cause for this.
It was a climate catastrophe.
Yes. Now it's a climate catastrophe because everything that the scientists want to talk about, who are getting funding from people who want climate catastrophe, is about climate now.
I thought that too, because that struck me too. And the quote from the guy whose name I did not write down at the end of the article was that it happened over 200 years. So the people, they may not have recognized the climate was changing because it happened so slowly in their lifetime. And my thought was that that's kind of a modern day bit of hubris, because the ancient Greeks weren't idiots.
No.
And they were probably much more tied to the land than we are, knowing that food comes from animals and farms, not grocery stores, as modern day people might think.
Absolutely.
Surely they would have noticed that, even if it was happening slowly. You notice if you have fewer crop yields, or if your animals are thinner than they have been in the past.
Absolutely. And you've actually seen where changes in climate have really destroyed civilizations. I mean, the Anasazi people in New Mexico and in Arizona, absolutely their culture was destroyed by climate change.
Right, but it bothered me that the scientists would say that they didn't notice it. They probably did notice it if that was the cause, but maybe they just didn't know how to fix it.
Right. Or beyond that, they should have gone to their favorite Greek blogger, Achilles. It's articles.
Oh.
Sorry. But
Oh, that was funny.
Okay. But I do have this other comment. If Rodney Dangerfield were an ancient Greek, I have a little bit of his routine.
Okay, let's hear it.
I tell you. I was talking to my wife the other day. She says I have a body like a Greek temple. It's in ruins. Then I said, "But honey, my body's like that of a Greek god." And she said, "Buddha's not Greek." Okay. That's all of my Rodney Dangerfield jokes from ancient Greece.
A slow, single, solitary sounding clap.
Oh, here, I'll add mine.
Our final article for this particular podcast is one the missus selected, and it's from the Wall Street Journal. The name of the article is "Even Homer Gets Mobbed." And when I saw that, I was kind of amazed because I was thinking The Simpsons, and that tells you where my mind was. But then I recalled one thing that I heard from an IT specialist once. If you were going to download any sort of classical Greek literature, never download Homer. It's always full of Trojans. So turning the actual article over to the missus, here you go.
Okay. After those terrible, terrible jokes. All right. So this is an op-ed that was in the Wall Street Journal, and my apologies for those of you trying to follow the link to this because it is behind a paywall because it is in the journal. Here's the gist of it. That there is this movement called #DisruptTexts. So clearly it's a Twitter movement, right? Which immediately tells you exactly how stupid it is. But basically what it is this group of teachers, and it's in Massachusetts primarily. And what they're doing is they just want to get rid of classics. And they're not talking just stuff from the Greeks. They're not talking just the Odyssey and the Iliad. They're talking things like, of course, Mark Twain, he's always a punching bag for the left. Nathaniel Hawthorne, Shakespeare even, and this is one quote from the piece that says, absolving Shakespeare of responsibility by mentioning that he lived at a time when hate-ridden sentiments prevailed, risks sending a subliminal message that academic excellence outweighs hateful rhetoric. Which, of course, means that if you read Shakespeare, clearly you're going to become anti-Semitic, misogynist, homophobe.
Well, yeah.
Duh. Why wouldn't you?
Look at Hollywood. Those actors all started off, doing Shakespeare at some point in their drama history, and we know how they all turned out.
And most of them probably were in a production of Oklahoma at some point in their high school career. So we all know this is Ado Annie's fault. So one teacher in this article actually even said that he would rather die than teach the Scarlet Letter. And I went through a phase a few years ago when I started going back and picking up the books that I should have been reading in high school when I was reading the Cliff Notes version instead so I could pass the quizzes. But I went back and I picked them up again and I read them and I found that I liked most of them a lot, except for the Scarlet Letter. Nope, still not fond of Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I could kind of sympathize with him on that. But here's what he said. He didn't think it should be taught unless it's used to fight misogyny and slut shaming. And my question is, was this guy doing what I did in his college courses? Did he read the Scarlet Letter and think that Hawthorne was for those things? It's not a how-to manual.
Yeah, and one of the problems with people like this is, for the left, it's always year zero. You have to destroy the past. The destruction of the past is the most important thing that they can do so that they can implant their culture. Only their relics from their culture are relevant. So if there's going to be a statue up, it's going to be of a leftist. And not only is it going to be of a leftist, it's going to be of a leftist they approve of. They have to destroy the previous culture. You see it again and again through history. The French Revolution, Pol Pot, he destroyed all of the cultural artifacts of Cambodia. And the Taliban blew up statues of Buddha that were over 2,000 years old. You have to get to year zero with the leftist thinking. Yeah,
and in China with their revolution as well, they ultimately turned and destroyed their native culture.
And a lot of this, you're right, is about erasing Western civilization. The basis of Western civilization comes from the ancient Greeks. They gave us philosophy. They gave us trial by jury. They gave us drama, theater, the foundations of modern medicine. All of those things come from the ancient Greeks. But now we should just ignore them because they don't fit what we view as modern society.
100%. That's their thought process.
What I'm also going to suggest that beyond the wokeness or political correctness is just a natural tendency of our public servants, especially those in unions, to not want to have to do any hard work. And frankly, it's harder work to teach Nathaniel Hawthorne or Shakespeare or Homer's Iliad than it is to do some modern young adult novel, which is what I believe that teacher was hoping to do.
I think that's a lot of it, Mark. And I've read Dickens and Hawthorne, even though I didn't like it, Shakespeare, and I've also read Toni Morrison. And while I thought the Toni Morrison book was fine, the other stuff was more difficult.
And what you get with the older classic literature is you get words that are sometimes a little bit beyond the vocabularies that they're even teaching in high schools nowadays, which I think that was predicted very, very well by Mr. Orwell.
And I think another thing that you get from that in reading those texts, from especially stuff that's from ancient Greek, is that you get a glimpse of a different culture. Mm-hmm. And in order to understand those things, you do have to understand something about that culture. And I think that might be problematic for some teachers like that. And so I think that by not teaching those things, our kids are missing out. And I think a lot of that comes from, so there are a lot of people out there who are teachers who are really good at what they do. And I know a lot of teachers. There are many in my family. I have friends that are teachers. And like I said, there are a lot of really good teachers, and some of them are even great teachers. They care about their students, and they really want to teach them how to think instead of what to think. But unfortunately, there are a large number of people who are in that second category because they found it too difficult to take calculus in college and ended up in education. And their position, they want to use their position to brainwash their students into thinking what they think. Here's the thing. If you don't know what your teacher's political views are, then they're likely a conservative. Because like vegans and people who are into Fitbit, liberals will always tell you.
Well, on that note, we'll be back next week with another edition of Bombs and Bants. And thank you for listening. I'm John.
I'm Mark.
And I'm the missus.
Take care.
Y'all come back now, you hear?